Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into one of the world's most enduring mysteries today, the Loch Ness Monster.
Nessie.
Yep. We've got some fascinating excerpts from a Chinese language podcast all about it. Eyewitness accounts, debunked hoaxes, and even the science of whether a creature like Nessie could actually exist.
It's going to be a fun one.
Definitely. But before we get to all that, we need to talk about the loch itself.
Oh, absolutely. Loch Ness is a huge part of the mystery. I mean, it's this deep, narrow lake right up there in the Scottish Highlands.
Like, how deep are we talking?
On average, 200 meters deep. But some spots go even deeper, down to like 230 meters.
Wow, that's deep.
It is. And to add to that, the water is super murky. You can't see very far at all because of all the algae and peat.
So we've got this huge, deep lake, practically zero visibility. Sounds like the perfect hiding spot for, well, anything, really.
It really is. I mean, who knows what's lurking down in those depths? That's what's kept people fascinated for like centuries.
Right. And speaking of centuries, our sources say the first Nessie sighting actually goes all the way back to the 7th century.
No way. Seriously.
Yeah. There's a book from that time that mentions a guy being killed by a water monster in Loch Ness.
Wow. Okay, so the legend goes way back. But the Nessie craze that we all know and love, that really started in the 1930s, right?
Exactly. 1933. Aldi McKay, she sees this large, whale-like creature.
A whale in a lake.
You'd think.
Okay.
Definitely strange. And then, boom, just a year later, we get that iconic photo, 1934, Robert Kenneth Wilson.
The one that made Nessie world famous.
That's the one. Long neck, surfacing in the water. It became like the image of the Loch Ness Monster. But even back then, there were skeptics.
Oh, yeah.
People were pointing out that the waves seemed too big for the size of the creature. They thought maybe it was a smaller object making the ripples.
Interesting. So even back then, people were looking for clues, trying to figure it out.
Totally. And paleontologists even chimed in. They were saying the creature's neck posture didn't match what we know about plesiosaurs.
Plesiosaur.
Those ancient marine reptiles, right? People often compare Nessie to them, like the Elasmosaurus.
Ah, I see. So right from the start, scientists were trying to see if the Nessie sightings lined up with what they knew about prehistoric creatures.
Yep. But then, of course, in 1994, everything changed. Turns out, the photo, total hoax,
Really?
a toy submarine, a sculpted head and neck. It was made to look like the real deal.
Wow. So that iconic photo, the one everyone knows, it wasn't even real.
Nope. But here's the thing. Just because that photo was a hoax doesn't mean all the other sightings are fake.
Right.
There were sightings before the photo and tons after it was debunked, too. It's like that saying, the absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence.
That's a good point. And I guess back in the 1930s, photography was still a relatively new thing.
It was.
So people probably saw photos as, like, the ultimate proof. It's interesting how that one image, real or not, really captured people's imaginations.
No, right. You could even say that finding out it was fake made people even more determined to find the real Nessie.
Totally. It definitely didn't stop people from searching. In fact, people from all over the world started flocking to Loch Ness. They all wanted to catch a glimpse of the monster for themselves.
It's amazing how a legend can capture the world's attention like that.
It really is. And there was even, like, a little rivalry for a while there, too, between England and Scotland.
Really?
Yeah. They're arguing over who actually owned Nessie, like who got the bragging rights to a mythical creature.
Huh. That's hilarious. But it really shows how Nessie became so much more than just a monster. She was like a symbol of Scotland, a source of local pride, and a huge boost for tourism, I bet.
Oh, definitely. But let's talk about those sightings, especially after the photo came out, because there were a lot of them.
So many. Like in 1955, Frank Searle gets a photo of this large shape near Urquhart Castle. And then in 1960, Peter O'Connor, a naturalist, snaps a nighttime photo of this massive shape in the water.
And those photos, even though they were grainy and kind of hard to make out, just added to the mystery. People wanted to believe.
Totally. And then in 1975, an underwater photo seems to show a long neck, which really got people thinking about plesiosaurs again.
The plot thickens.
Right. But then, in 1977, there's this blurry color photo taken by Anthony Doc Shields. Most people think that one was another hoax.
Oh, man. Talk about keeping people on their toes.
Right. But the sightings just kept coming. In the 1990s and 2000s, we get video footage. And even a large tooth was found near the lake in 2005.
Whoa, a tooth. Really? What did it look like?
Well, people said it was unusually big and strong. Pointed tip, serrated edges. It definitely looked more like something you'd find in the ocean, not a freshwater lake.
So was it Nessie's tooth? Did they ever find out?
Well, they analyzed it, but the results were inconclusive. The tooth was just too worn out to get any DNA or identify the species.
So close. It's like every time we get a lead, it slips away.
I know. It's like Nessie's playing hide and seek with us. But before we get too carried away with all the mystery, let's think about the science for a second.
Okay, good idea. Sometimes it's good to step back and be realistic.
Right, because if there really is a creature like Nessie out there, it would need a lot of food to survive, wouldn't it?
That's a great point.
Does Loch Ness even have enough to support a large predator like that?
That's where things get interesting. Because research has shown that Loch Ness, even though it's huge, it doesn't actually have a ton of fish.
Oh, interesting. So how much food would a creature like Nessie actually need just to survive?
Well, studies have shown that at most, Loch Ness could probably support 2, maybe 3 large creatures, each weighing around a ton.
Oh, wow. So that's like, what, the size of a crocodile?
Exactly. And you think about some of the descriptions of Nessie, people say she's like 4 to 6 meters long. That's got to be way more than a ton, right?
Right. And if there's only enough food for 2 or 3 creatures max, doesn't that mean it's basically impossible for there to be a whole breeding population?
Yeah, that's the problem. Even if Nessie is real, it would be a pretty lonely existence for her. Imagine being the only one of your kind, stuck in this giant, murky lake. Kind of a sad thought, actually.
It does add a whole other layer to the story, doesn't it?
It really does. And that's what I love about this mystery. It constantly makes you think and rethink what you thought you knew.
So what if Nessie isn't a plesiosaur? What if it's something else altogether?
Now you're asking the right questions. And that's where we'll pick things up in the next part of our deep dive, exploring some alternative theories about what Nessie could be.
Can't wait. Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get even more interesting. So we've talked about plesiosaurs, but Loch Ness might not be the best place for them to live, and a whole family of Nessies seems pretty unlikely, at least if they need to eat.
Yeah, the food chain thing is definitely a challenge to the plesiosaur theory. But that doesn't mean there's nothing down there.
Right. What are some of the other ideas about what Nessie could be?
Well, some people think Nessie could be like a giant invertebrate, like a colossal squid or a massive octopus.
Wait, hold on. A giant squid in Loch Ness. How would that even work?
I know, it sounds kind of crazy, right? But there are some types of squid that live in really deep, cold water. And Loch Ness is definitely both of those things. Plus, it's so murky down there, a creature that big could easily hide.
True. But wouldn't a squid need to come up to the surface to breathe?
Exactly. That's one of the reasons why most scientists don't think the giant squid theory is very likely. Someone would have seen a giant tentacle by now, right?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Okay, so no giant squid. What else?
Well, there's another invertebrate theory that's a little bit more plausible. What if Nessie is like a giant mutated eel?
A mutant eel. Okay, now we're talking. That's a little more exciting.
Right. Eels are super adaptable. And there are cases of them growing to like really surprising sizes. So imagine an eel that's not just huge, but also like has some weird genetic mutation.
I like where you're going with this. Yeah, a giant mutant eel would explain some of those sightings, especially with the water being so murky. But have researchers considered any truly out there explanations, like anything, paranormal?
Paranormal, huh? Well, some people think Nessie might be a time traveler.
Whoa. Okay, now that's thinking outside the box.
It does sound kind of wild, but there are physicists who believe time travel could be possible, at least in theory. And they say that there might be certain places on Earth that act like portals or gateways to other dimensions or time periods.
Wait, are you saying Nessie could be a creature from the past or even the future that somehow came through a time portal in Loch Ness?
It's a wild theory, but it would definitely explain why she's so elusive and why she doesn't seem to fit in with any known creatures. Of course, the time travel theory is pretty out there, but it's fun to think about, right?
Totally. I love how this mystery pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible. But okay, let's get back to those eyewitness accounts. We're talking about thousands of people over the years who claim they've seen something.
Yeah, you can't just ignore all those stories.
Right. And some of them are from pretty credible sources, too. We're talking experienced boaters, scientists, even locals who've lived by the loch their whole lives. And they're not just seeing ripples or shadows.
Nope, they're describing very specific things.
Exactly, like a long neck, humps, head with horns, even a body like a snake. That's got to be more than just logs or seals, right?
Definitely. And when you look at all these different accounts, you start to see some patterns emerge, things that keep popping up. over and over again. That makes you think maybe there really is something out there.
So are there any eyewitness accounts that really stick out? Ones that seem especially believable or convincing?
Oh, yeah. There are a bunch of them. Like, one of the most famous is from Tim Dinsdale and Dick Rayner. Back in 1960, they filmed what looked like a big, dark shape moving through the water.
Wait, is that the Dinsdale film? The one that some people say is just a boat or a wave?
That's the one. It's crazy how, even with video footage, people still can't agree on what it shows. Some experts say it really is a large creature.
It's fascinating how, even with all our technology, this mystery is still unsolved. It's like Nessie knows how to stay just out of reach. But hey, speaking of technology, what about sonar? I've heard about all these weird sonar readings from Loch Ness. What's the deal with those?
Oh, yeah, the sonar stuff. Over the years, there have been a lot of sonar surveys done in Loch Ness, and some of them have used really high-tech equipment specifically designed to find large objects underwater.
So what have they found? Anything interesting?
Most of the sonar readings can be explained away pretty easily. It's usually just schools of fish or changes in temperature or weird stuff on the lake bed. But there have been a few anomalies, some blips on the radar that haven't been explained.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. Anomalies, huh? Tell me more.
One of the most interesting ones was from the 1970s. Researchers from the Academy of Applied Science, they were using the special sonar to map the bottom of the loch. It's called a side scan sonar, and it creates really detailed images of the lake bed.
So they were basically taking pictures of the bottom of the lake.
Exactly. And guess what? They found this big, unidentified object just sitting there on the lake bed.
No way. What did it look like?
From the sonar images, it looked like it was about 10 meters long, and it had this weird hump shape.
10 meters. That's huge. What did they think it was?
Well, they were excited, of course, but they were also being careful. They said it could have been a distortion from the sonar, or maybe just a rock formation or sunken log. They couldn't be sure.
So another mystery. Did they ever get a clearer image? Or send down divers to check it out?
Not that I know of. The technology back then wasn't as good as what we have now, but that image is still a big piece of the puzzle. And it's not the only weird sonar reading either.
There are more.
Oh, yeah. In the 1980s, a sonar operator named David Addy, he said he picked up this large moving object that seemed to be following his boat. He said it was like a biomass, about the size of a small whale.
Whoa. A giant biomass stalking his boat. Sounds creepy. What happened? Did it attack?
No, luckily it didn't attack. Addy said that when he turned off his boat's engine, the object disappeared from the sonar. Some people think he just misread the sonar data, but he was a very experienced operator, so who knows?
So even with sonar, we still don't have a clear answer.
It seems that way. But those strange sonar readings, along with the eyewitness accounts and everything else, they keep the debate going. And that's what keeps people searching.
You're right. It's all about the search for the truth. But let's shift gears for a second. What about actual physical evidence? Has anyone ever found anything that could prove Nessie is real?
Now, that would be the ultimate find. We haven't found a skeleton or anything like that, but there have been some interesting discoveries. Remember that big tooth we talked about? The one found near the lake in 2005?
Yeah, the one that looked like it came from an ocean predator. But they couldn't say for sure. Were there any other finds like that?
There was one back in the early 1970s, a group called the Loch Ness Investigation Bureau. They were doing some underwater exploration. And during one of their dives, they found a big bone fragment on the lake bed.
A bone fragment. Was it like a little chip of bone or something bigger?
It was about 30 centimeters long and pretty heavy, too. It had this rough texture.
Wow, that's a pretty big piece of bone. So did they figure out what creature it came from?
They did. It was from a large mammal, but not a reptile.
Ah, so not Nessie. What kind of mammal was it?
Probably a deer or a cow that fell into the loch and drowned. Kind of a letdown, I know. But it shows how hard it is to find real evidence in a place like Loch Ness.
It's like every time we think we're getting close, the mystery gets even bigger. But even those dead ends are part of the story, aren't they?
Definitely. Each piece of evidence, even if it doesn't prove Nessie exists, adds to the mystery. And that's what keeps people coming back year after year. The mystery is just too good to resist.
I agree. It's a good reminder that even in our world of data and facts, there's still room for mystery and the unknown. But, it always makes me wonder, what if Nessie isn't just one creature? What if there's a whole group of them?
A Nessie family.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. There have been so many sightings spanning hundreds of years in different parts of the loch. It's hard to imagine it's just one lone creature.
That's a good point. And if there really is a breeding population, that opens up a whole new set of questions. Where do they make their nests? What do they eat? How do they stay hidden so well?
It would mean they're the ultimate hiders. What if they're not just hiding, though? What if they migrate, you know, move between Loch Ness and other connected waterways, maybe even out to sea?
That's an interesting idea. It could explain why there are times when there are lots of Nessie sightings and then long stretches where nothing happens.
Like they're taking a family vacation, and then they come back to Loch Ness after a few years.
Haha, maybe. That would definitely make them even more mysterious. And it would mean they're not just good at hiding, but also really smart and adaptable.
Right. Okay, so maybe a whole Nessie family is still just a theory, but it's a pretty cool addition to this whole mystery. Makes you wonder what other secrets Loch Ness is hiding.
And how we'll ever figure them out.
I know, but we've only scratched the surface of the evidence. Stay with us as we delve even deeper into the mystery of the Loch Ness Monster. A flipper, huh? That's wild. It just shows you, even with all our fancy cameras and stuff, we still can't get a clear picture of what's going on down there.
Nope, the mystery continues. But one of the things that really gets me about the whole Nessie thing is just how many people say they've seen her. We're talking thousands of sightings over the years.
It's true, and it's hard to just dismiss all of those, right?
Exactly. Especially when some of the reports come from people who know what they're talking about, like experienced boaters, scientists, people who've lived by Loch Ness their whole lives. And they're not just seeing like a splash or a shadow, they're giving detailed descriptions.
Right, they're describing a long neck, humps, even a head with horns. It can't all be explained away as misidentifications or hoaxes, can it?
I don't think so. I mean, when you look at all the reports together, you do start to see some common threads, some patterns that suggest maybe there really is something out there.
So are there any eyewitness accounts that are particularly convincing?
Definitely. Like one of the most famous ones is from 1960. Tim Dinsdale and Dick Rayner, they were filming on the loch, and they captured what looks like a large, dark object moving through the water.
Oh, is that the Dinsdale film? The one that some people say is just a boat or something?
Yep, that's the one. It's amazing. Even with video footage, people still can't agree on what they're seeing. Some experts are convinced it's a large creature.
It just shows you this whole Nessie thing is more than just a simple mystery. Even with all our modern tech, we haven't been able to solve it.
Exactly. There's still so much we don't know about the world, and I think that's part of what makes this story so captivating. It's a reminder that there's still a sense of wonder out there.
It is humbling, in a way. So, after all of this, the evidence, the hoaxes, the science, where do we stand? Do you think Nessie is real?
Well, we haven't found that absolute undeniable proof, like a skeleton or a piece of her skin, but there's enough out there, enough weird sonar readings and convincing eyewitness accounts that it's hard to completely rule it out?
It's like we have all these puzzle pieces, but we're not sure how they fit together yet.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's what keeps people fascinated, keeps them coming back to Loch Ness. It's that desire to find those missing pieces and solve the puzzle.
It's a story that transcends generations, cultures. It really captures the imagination.
And it reminds us that there's still a place for mystery and wonder in our lives, even in a world that's so focused on facts and data.
You're absolutely right. The search for Nessie is about more than just finding a monster. It's about the thrill of the unknown, the possibility of something extraordinary.
It makes you realize that there's always more to learn, always something new to discover, and that's pretty exciting.
I agree. So to everyone listening, we leave you with this: what do you think is lurking beneath the surface of Loch Ness? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep that sense of wonder alive. You never know what you might find.